And I'm going to speak to you today, and we've talked to all of our customers and our prospects in the pipeline and how to sell value when a lot of people are still trying to sell themselves. And when I say they're trying to sell themselves, I'm talking about a few things. I'm talking about themselves as individual salespeople, the company that they work for, or the product or service that they represent, because that's really not what they're selling. What they sell is how people use the product, how they use the company's capabilities or the services that are offered to generate value. And I think a few of the things to consider when we take a look at January and February of this year and the 10-year run-up that got us to this point is that the economy has been pretty frothy for a long time. And was it really selling or was it buying that was going on? So was it the horse or the rider that was generating sales? And the broad reality now is that these sellers are going to have to do some things differently than they did going up through just February of this year to get results. And that's focusing on the value. A lot of sellers that I speak to, and we've worked in 17 different countries around the world, they rely on relationships. They say relationships is the key in sales, and I completely disagree. I'm saying that relationships are definitely important, but all the steak dinners and all the rounds of golf that you've provided are not going to keep your existing relationships if there isn't value identified. And we know there's a lot of companies out there right now who are looking hard at the P&L. They're making decisions. I had one customer say that one of their customers has sent them an invoice and said, we're just taking a 15% discount. Boom, here's the payment. What are you going to do about it, more or less? So the establish of the value and make a clear understanding of what you bring to that table. It's got to be in place. And where is that value identified? Where and when? And Peter and I worked together 20 years ago in the .com, which turned out to be the .bomb era. And a lot of people were selling value propositions. They were telling people, here's how you make money working with us. And companies sold 10x multiples on ideas around value propositions. Conversely, I've lived through and worked through 4 recessions. And how do we successfully do it? And we got to make sure that there's a clear understanding of how your customers and or prospects in the pipeline will use what you provide to achieve a goal, solve a problem, or satisfy a need. But here's the rub. What you did with them through the end of this year, or the planning that you did at the beginning of this year, changed on March 13th or 16th, or whenever we went into lockdown and we had to forced to do things that restricted travel. So do we really understand the objective? Do we know what's important to the company? And many of them are making those adjustments to their plans right now. Some are in survival mode. Some are taking a look and saying, hey, this is a growth opportunity. We're going to take some share from the competition. How do they clearly understand what the value is from the customer standpoint? So I'll just go to a couple of slides here very broadly. And Greg, I hope I'm okay here, just sharing the screen. Give me some guidance if not. In order to establish value and make sure that they're not just relying on the product of the company to do the selling for them, sellers have got to make sure they know what the business objective is of their customer or prospects. And there's a couple of different ways to get that accomplished. You can ask them what it is, or you can share insight, how to get to that insight. And this might have changed, as I just mentioned to you a few minutes ago. It could have changed from the planning that you did at the kickoff meeting that was just in January to now, the last day of April. So do we know what's important to those customers? Are we very clear on what is the objective from those key players in the organizations? We could ask them, we could share menus of insight, or we could tell them a success story from an existing customer. And once we have that identified, there's a very simple conversational map here that we use to help to get to the value. What's the business objective or objectives of the key players in these organizations? Do we know what it is? Let's not rely on the relationship. Let's make sure that we understand that we know what's happening in their business, if there's been any changes. And are there challenges, or did challenges show up with the COVID virus that impact their business objectives? Then we talk about us. And this third part here is your capabilities, your organizations, how people use your product or services, different than just talking about the product or service itself. It's a simple model. It's very clear. We help our customers to refine these conversations to make sure that value is established. If it's not, if it's commoditized, procurement divisions, purchasing agents are going to be out there kicking the tires right now to try and find a less costly solution. So the last thing I want to share with you is you take a look at the skills that we ask sellers to master and execute on the regular basis. And right now, if they haven't already done so, developing solutions with value, which is right in the middle of this grid that we talk about in the different selling skills to be executed, has got to be refined, has got to be mastered and executed. So Greg, I don't know if you had any questions or we pass it around. That looks like 9 minutes to me out of 13.
Yeah, so if anybody has questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question or send a text, a chat through the chat box. But yeah, I guess, the one thing, right, given this current environment that we're in, right, everyone's trying to, save money on, everything that they're looking at, right? So how are you coaching your customers right now to handle requests for price reductions?
It's happening on a regular basis. What we're coaching them to do is to ask if somebody is legitimately purchasing, doing a regular stream of business with them and they're asking for a discount, is to try and get some future commitment down the road to say, when, not if, when we come out of this, would you be willing to do something else in addition with us? Not different than regular standard negotiating strategy, but if we provide something, we ask for something in return. And we've had some circumstances where others in survival mode this quickly, 1 month into it, have said, no, you just got to give us a discount. Well, they got a business decision to make, Greg. But in most circumstances, we're talking about long-term relationships that our customers have with their customers, is how can we get some future commitment down the road if we're willing to make a concession today?
Very good point. Very good point. The other thing that I get asked a lot from my customers too is, just given, everyone's in the lockdown and everything that's happening right now. Can you really be looking for new business in this environment? What are your thoughts there?
You got to look for new business in this environment, but it's how you approach looking for the new business. I'm not going to call my existing customers and try and extend our contract or prospects that are in the pipeline at this point. The first thing we did is reach out and said to our customers, how can we help you? What's going on with the team? How's the morale? 60% of our customers are in pretty good shape. The others need some help. So how can we help first? But then, of course, back to the points I was making in the conversation, Greg, what's the objective? How has their go-to-market strategy changed? And what are the things we can do to help their salespeople to embrace that with their customers? So that's the first approach. I'm not suggesting that we cold call during a pandemic, but it certainly is a good time to do a lot of the things for companies who aren't busy that they've been putting off or they haven't gotten to. Cleaning up the CRM, refining target lists, going into LinkedIn and cleaning up some of the prospect profiles that they have in there. So it is a good time to prime the pump and get ready. And to ask customers when you do or if you are, then what could we discuss?
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a great approach for sales teams to be taking right now, right? For sure.
Yeah, and we have some, and I've had some who I've reached out to said, how dare you call during this? It's a really bad time. I agree. It is a bad time, which is why I'm calling. Because I've had conversations with them 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years ago. What's happening in your world right now? How can we address it when the time is right?
So whenever you have that type of call with that client, how do you switch from stop selling yourself to selling the value?
What I try and do is in my hip pocket, I have one of those success stories ready to go. When I'm calling into that organization, and I encourage salespeople to be ready to do that, to refer to the success story that they were able to help somebody with in a similar title, similar industry, and what it looked like and the impact that they made. They might not be ready today. I get it. Some are in survival mode, but can we tell that brief story and say, may I follow up when that time is right?
Awesome. Awesome. Well, John, hey, thank you for your time. Appreciate all your insight, from the sales and business development side of things.